Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on? I'm going back.
Welcome back, everybody. The Bacon and Egg Show, episode number 42, February 21st, 2021. A lot of twos and ones in there.
Yeah.
Jay, how you doing, man? Interesting week since the last show, huh?
Yeah, we're about thawed out by now. We were frozen for a little bit there. We were just stuck in the house, and I know a lot of you were too. So we hope you're doing all right. That you got through that deep freeze of Texas. That you got through it all right and safely and all that stuff. So, but we're doing okay. We made it all right over here, down here in at the Buda location of the Bacon and Eggs Enterprise. So how you guys make it through all right up there?
We did. Yeah, we lucked out. This old house held up, so we were fortunate for that, and happy for the great thaw, and now on to spring.
Yes.
So
Yes. Please.
Well, man, let's get into this here. We were supposed to have a Texas versus OU basketball game midweek, like we discussed last week. This kind of run that Texas was supposed to go on, this stacking up of games, and that didn't quite happen given the weather situation. So we were left with, if you correct me if I'm wrong, so we would have had the Texas OU game in Norman, then Texas Iowa State, and then the West Virginia game. Well, the OU was postponed. Is the Iowa State game just flat canceled?
I haven't seen it rescheduled.
Okay.
Yet.
So basically we didn't have any that 3 games in 6 days, whatever that run would have been, happen. Instead, we just got yesterday's game versus West Virginia. There's a lot to unpack from this game here.
Definitely.
Where do you want to start, Jay?
Man, I want to start with, it was an 84-82 loss to West Virginia. I want to start with some positives here, because there were some positives, in my opinion, to this game. Before we really hone in on the negatives of what should have been an easy victory for this Texas team, I thought Jericho Sims shot out of the gate with his hair on fire, ready to go, and really set the tone early on for Texas, just with a lot moving without the basketball, offensive rebounds and putbacks. He had I felt like he had 5 dunks within the first 10 minutes of the game to really set the tone for Texas early on. Overall, Texas shot 54% from the field, Kerry. So it's not one of those things where you look and it was a super poor shooting night. And they also shot. Excuse me. Oh, got excited there because I was about to talk about how well they shot from 3-point range, which was right there, right again at 54%, man. So there were some positive things here, man. Were there any other positives for you that stood out yesterday?
The first half performance was fantastic, and the first part of the second half was great. I think they looked locked in. They looked ready to go. West Virginia's a good team, a really good team. And, to kind of segue into the negative here, Texas played well enough to get a 19-point lead in this game in the second half. And that is impressive against, West Virginia entered this game 13th in the country,
Right.
Texas number 12. So to build a 19-point lead against a really good West Virginia team is impressive. It's just hard kind of from then what happened after that it's tough. Like you said, they shot well. Like Texas through the course of the game shot well. The turnovers were a negative. We'll get into the negatives here, Jay, unless there's anything any more of the positives you
No, I mean
hit on?
the guard play for Texas overall was pretty good. I mean, it was
Yeah,
really good. It's the type of guard play that they'll need to make a run in the tournament.
yeah,
Ramey had 28. Yeah, 28 points. Coleman had 20 and 7 assists. Uh, it felt like for a while there that Courtney Ramey couldn't miss.
yeah,
And he's just one of those players when he is on, there's not much anybody in the country really can do to stop him. If he's on, he's on, because he's I think of him from I don't know why this just came to my like from a wrestler. Professional wrestlers have these move sets, right? Courtney Ramey's move set on the basketball court is very unique. So when he's hitting the shots in his move set, he's gonna have nights like this where he drops 28 points,
yeah.
and he's that dangerous. And Coleman had a wonderful night too. Played 38 minutes, hardly ever came off the floor. 20 points and 7 assists. Looked good, looked really good. But there were times in the second half where West Virginia went to a zone, and all of a sudden it went from movement. Guards were moving, bigs were moving, everybody was moving around with and without the basketball to a just a very standstill, pass around the perimeter, get a bad look at a three late in the shot clock sort of an offense. And when those aren't falling, you're in trouble. And that's the sort of run that Texas went on there, where they just went ice cold. They weren't moving, they weren't running any much of an offense at all. And it bit them, man. They only scored, when you score 58 points in the first half, 53 points in the first half, and you only scored 29 in the second half. Like, there was this stretch of time there, Kerry, from like the 11 and a half, 12-minute mark all the way until maybe the 7-minute mark, where I feel like they had like 2 buckets. They just had this huge stretch of time, and whatever was working in the first half was not working in the second half at all. And they didn't make the adjustments that they needed to make, and it bit them.
No, they didn't. And that's where, I mean, if you just look at the final score, you go, this is a 2-point loss to a team that's ranked 1 spot away from you. You go, oh, okay, well, that's not so bad. But I think the fashion that it happened, blowing a 19-point lead, you saw, on the broadcast, they made a big deal out of the scuffle that happened between Andrew Jones and Ramey there after Jones didn't cover his spot on the defensive end. Those things happen. Those things happen on teams all the time. I think they made maybe there's some truth to it. I mean, I think those things happen quite often. I think they made a bigger deal out of it on the broadcast as to why Texas blew that lead, and they looked out of sorts after that. But maybe there is something to them not just being there mentally after that. But I don't know. I don't know if it had that big of an effect. But still, I just can't get, it's a 19-point lead that was blown. And, we talk about the eye test a lot, and the eye test in that second half was reminiscent of these Shaka Smart teams over the past few years that just couldn't get the job done. Bad habits crept back in. And that might be kind of a simplistic way of putting it, but it felt that way. It was a like, here we go again type thing. And we talk about the K-State game, blowing a lead there, nearly losing that, being in a position to lose that game if you'll make clutch free throws. It's this kind of, here we are now, we're seeing a little bit of a trend here. The Oklahoma State game going cold. And the schedule doesn't get any easier. We've been talking about that for a few weeks now, and it's like, but I don't know. I don't want to try to go too negative here, because I think what we're seeing is probably a little bit of regression to the mean, right? Like, going into this season, knowing the talent that was on this team and all those things, we talked about, like, this is a top 15-ish type team that's probably going to finish somewhere in the middle of the Big 12. This team's right there.
Yeah.
And I think, the early run in the season moving up into the top 4 was maybe a little, got over the skis a little bit. with the potential, with what this team can do. But I mean, I definitely still think this is a team that should be getting into the second week of the tournament. That's probably going to finish in the top 15, and but we have to temper that against the expectations of when they were at number 4 in the country.
Absolutely. It's a great point because that's being number 4 in the country, being a 1 seed in the tournament, basically, if you just go by the by the rankings there, Texas was on the 1 line for a lot of people's brackets during that stretch of the season. They were
Right.
a 1 seed for a lot of people because of that type of basketball that they were playing, and it was understandable. That's their peak. That's the ceiling of this. I shouldn't say that's their peak. That is the ceiling of what this team can be. They can play like a Final Four type team.
Yeah.
What you're seeing right now is exactly what you described. It's a team that plays well enough to get through the first weekend of the tournament and then loses in the Sweet 16. That's the type of team that we thought we would see coming into the season. That's about where we thought. It's what we're seeing now. And it is about where, if they're not playing at their best, if they're not making their free throws like they were 4 out of 10 yesterday,
Protecting the ball, those kinds of things that.
yeah, all of the
Yeah.
things, 17 turnovers yesterday, I believe. And it's just, you can't, if you're going to be a Final Four team, those types of things can happen. I told you and Mike yesterday, like it felt like a tournament game. And it felt like a game where you're playing a really good team on the second weekend. You have a lead, but they're a really good team, and you let them back in it, and they find a way to put you away.
Yeah. And
that's
Bob
how-
Huggins is
that's
a
how-
great coach that can
Yeah.
out adjust anybody for the most part. Like he's been around the game for a long, long time and has had a lot of success. So, not to say that because Shaka drew up the plays to try to win that game there at the end. It just wasn't executed. So it's not a matter of just saying like, oh, Huggins outcoached Smart. But you're right. In a tournament scenario, you're going to be up against good coaches that know how to adjust on the fly. You have to match those adjustments. And yeah, I completely agree. It did feel like a tournament game, and it just came up against an experienced, well-coached, talented opponent. Deep too.
I'm glad you brought up that point about Shaka drawing up those plays, because I give him a lot of grief for not really doing well for running set plays out of timeouts and stuff. But 2 of them at the end of that game were drawn up perfectly, and like you said, just weren't executed. So he put this team into a position to win, or at least to take a lead late in the game, 2 different times there. So I mean, that's what you need. And again, there are coaches. That's how there are, when you're playing teams that are equally as talented as you in a tournament in March. Those are the difference makers that either you're advancing to the Elite 8, and then you play well there and you make a Final Four, or you go out in the Sweet 16 because a team came back against you and you weren't able to get the big shot. So it's just, Texas is playing good basketball. They're playing the type of basketball that you want to play, that you want to see a team play, that they're capable of playing in March in the big dance. Now, not finishing this game obviously is concerning, but
Right.
It still feels to me like I'm not jumping ship here. I'm not ready to say that this team's ceiling still isn't a Final Four, because it is. But you just got to look yesterday at what Texas may be. They may be showing us who they are come tournament time.
Right. And you are what your record says you are.
Right.
And but yeah, the 19 point lead, losing that was concerning. I mean, because this team should be at the point, with the experience that they have and the talent that's on the roster, like they should be at this point where they, in a second half where they've got a 19-point lead, to see it out. Like finish the job. If it gets down to like a 5 or 6 point game, just finish it off. And that's where, I mean, that to me is concerning. Is it concerning enough to be like, this team's about to crater and just completely collapse? And, no, I don't think that's the case. I think they have some things to work out. And I think Shaka's got to do some relationship mending here with, I know these guys are frustrated. It's been a tough season all around. But it has for everybody. I mean, this, COVID stops haven't been limited to Austin, and it's been something that the entire country's dealing with, and it's tough for Shaka to. This is a hell of a coaching job he's got to do this year, and I think he's doing well.
I
Like,
agree.
But he's got a little bit of relationship coaching to do with this team and get their heads right for this stretch here. So,
And
which I think he will.
if that locker room wouldn't already be such a good environment, if you wouldn't already feel so good about how much that team loves each other, then it might be more concerning. But
Right.
the confidence for me is there that Shaka will do what he needs to do, and those guys care about each other. They're friends. It's not, they're friends. And sometimes when a friend lets another friend know that they're not holding up their end of the deal,
Yep.
feelings get hurt. But they're good enough ball players and good enough. They get it. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that part of this at all moving forward. And I will say though that Kai Jones in 25 minutes didn't give a lot and had a couple of turnovers, a couple of times where I thought, he was in opportunities to be successful and the ball went through his hands, or he just didn't have a great day offensively.
I'd say the same for Greg Brown too. He was.
Yeah. I mean, that Greg Brown, that's a disappointment. Like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that can't happen to be taken out of the equation like that. And is that at the expense of Ramey and Coleman both going over 20? I mean, like that to me, a player of that ability, of that talent, you can't have a goose egg, man. Like,
no, and even then, even if it's a matter of like just the points being distributed around to other players, you still want to see a guy like that flash in other areas. And he was pretty non-existent, like both sides of the floor, getting involved. He just kind of disappeared. And I don't know if that was, due to West Virginia making sure to neutralize that guy. Maybe there's a bit of that. Don't let Brown be the one that gets hot and beat you.
Absolutely. And I think that running the 2-3 zone to clog up the middle there and not really let him get comfortable down low on the block, that's a big part of that. But again, he's a better ball player than to let a 2-3 zone
exactly
take him out of the equation. Like he's way too good of a ball player for that to be the case. And I think that to me too is when West Virginia went to that 2-3 zone, for me, the 2-3 zone should be one of the easiest defenses to beat, because every player has a specific place on the court that they're supposed to get. You drive the ball towards the basket, you get two defenders on you, and then you pass to the person that's open. And then you do it again until it's like, I don't understand why Texas didn't do that more against the zone. Like that's something that I was always coached to do against a two. And you can force a 2-3 zone. Somebody will have to be open. You drive and that's what I don't get. And that's when Texas is standing around on the perimeter and not attacking that 2-3 zone,
making it too easy for them.
Exactly. That's the West Virginia didn't even have to really work too hard when you're doing that. Like you're playing to the defense there, as opposed to, we talk about, let's bring up some old stuff here. We're talking about Tom Herman talking about letting the defense dictate where you go with the ball and stuff like that. And it's like, you can't, basketball is the same way. You can't allow the defense to dictate what you do with the ball. You on offense have to be the assertive ones. And in the second half, especially when West Virginia basically ran that zone the entire half, they played to the defense. They allowed the defense to dictate what they were doing, and it showed. And Greg Brown not scoring any points at all in this game is I don't know if you can put it on Shaka for not just calling more plays to directly get him involved, but he was shooting the ball, and he came in shooting from three. He'd made like 8 out of his last 9 from three. And then he started jacking up 3-pointers early in the game and didn't hit anything, and then just sort of went away. And it's like, that can't happen. No. Especially when you get to come tournament time. If this team is going to be successful, Greg Brown cannot score 0 points.
Yeah, he has
Period.
to be a contributor
Yes.
on the score
Yeah.
sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's what, to your point on the zone thing. I mean, like whether I mean, it's kind of the same in any sport that has a zone defense. We talk about zone defense in football, kind of zone defense that happens in hockey. There's always a soft spot. In every zone defense, there's always a soft spot. And they're easy to exploit if you move around. If you get to those open spaces in a zone defense, then you break it down. But you have to keep moving around to do that. That's how you break it down in a zone. When you get the defensive players moving around and out of their element, then you break it. And like you said, just being at the perimeter and just passing the ball around and just saying, oh, well, there's nowhere to go here. There's nowhere to go there. You're not even trying to break the zone at that point. It's just kind of like, oh, well, like the Tom Herman thing's perfect. Like, oh, well, let's just see if they make the mistake and allow us to do what we want to do instead of it trying to exploit those soft areas of the zone and make it happen. But I, yeah, we'll see. It's gonna. I still have faith in this team.
Yeah.
This isn't. I'm not incredibly concerned about it. It is something to keep note of, keep in the memory banks to see, as things develop that we can reference back at the end of the season, and we can either say this is where this was some adversity that they flipped it back around, or this is where it started to go off the rails a little bit. And I hope that's not the case. I don't think it's going to be, but it's not a good loss. Not a good
No.
loss.
No. But
Well, let's move on to a little bit of excitement going on the 48.
yeah.
We had let's get into some all gas and no brakes here. More recruiting talk and more happenings with the football team. And yeah, Steve Sarkisian's getting it going, isn't he?
Yeah, man. It's when we talked about Steve Sarkisian being an elite recruiter, and Mike, our Longhorn insider Mike Holland, really when we were talking to him right away, is the first thing that he says is elite recruiter. And that is, we're seeing that in action right now. We're seeing these 5-star, high 4-star guys, that are setting the tone for this class and are they're not just talking the talk in terms of, oh, I'm going to be a recruiter. I'm going to really be out there pushing for guys from Texas. We're seeing it in action online like we haven't ever seen before with the University of Texas in this online era of social media and players being able to interact with each other so easily online. And and Mike backed us up on this too. He said you've never seen anything like this before, especially when it comes from like the out-of-state Pied Piper guy. Mike was saying, like, you haven't seen it, and year one, Sark has not coached one game at Texas, Kerry, and we're seeing this sort of shift in the recruiting in Texas.
Yeah, I mean, he brings a reputation, not just, I mean, obviously in the recruiting aspect of it, but this is different than like he's bringing a different, I don't want to say like skill set kind of thing, but he's got some more cachet to bring to the table that Tom Herman didn't have. Like Tom Herman was successful at Houston. He won some big games there, but you couldn't really point to players from really his stops at Ohio State and Houston to like kind of say he's responsible for this development, and put these guys into the league and develop them into, what they are. Where with Steve Sarkisian, it's really clear, look at what he did, Devontae Smith, Mac Jones, Tua, like boom, 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 boom. Here is a list of results and where he's been over these stops over time that have like they're tangible, concrete results that he can bring to the table with recruits. Then you add in like the winning aspect. Like he wasn't just at a place that like just developed players but didn't win a lot of games. He was at Alabama and won trophies. You know, he coached at USC. He has connections out west. Like all these things just combining into this, you know, I don't want to call it a perfect storm because a perfect storm would be Texas winning 10 games and playing for a Big 12 championship next year. And that's when the perfect storm really starts to kick off. You take all that, all those things about Steve Sarkisian's career, the staff that he's hired, and now Texas winning games. And that, I think, is the perfect scenario. This is just the beginning of it. And it's really impressive.
Yeah, and that's, I think your point about the having that sort of war chest of what he can show built up. You know, Herman had a couple of guys that you could maybe say, hey, see, but it's not nearly as impressive as what Sark brings to the table. And it's when you hear guys that are talking like this guy Kevin Coleman, this 5-star wide receiver out of St. Louis, and you hear him have a lot of positive things to say about Coach Sarkisian, and that he has people down here that have told him that the people on this staff are guys that he can trust. Like, these are the sort of things that he's saying in interviews, speaking very highly of this program. It's one of those things where even if he doesn't end up with the program, a recruit of that level speaking that highly of a program, that sends ripples on its own.
Yep.
And allows, it allows for the further sort of evolution of what Texas is as a school for recruiting. It's awesome to watch. It's just another level up. You know, I think when Mac was, by the time Mac was done, and he had basically not recruited very well for a while, and had sort of coasted, and they hadn't developed the players that they had recruited very well. And then you get Charlie in here, and Coach Strong was, we saw a different kind of recruiting. And then you get Tom Herman in here, and who has some top 3 classes and shows that he can recruit. But then by the time his coaching tenure is done, you really see him for who he is as a head coach at this point in his coaching career.
Yeah.
What you have with Coach Sarkisian, we've seen the continued steps taken up and up the ladder from where Mac left the program to now where Sark is. And it's now back. We're seeing it back to where Mac Brown had it when Mac Brown was at his recruiting peak. That's the sort of level of recruiting we're already seeing from Steve Sarkisian without having coached a game in Austin. That should excite people. That should excite fans of this program for sure.
Well, and it's interesting when you mention this hits on perfectly with one of the commits that Texas received this week. You talk about the evolution of recruiting, the evolution of the pitch of coming to Texas, and the commitment of Evan Stewart, the 4-star wide receiver from Frisco Liberty, who may end up being a 5-star by the end of this cycle. Just an absolute gem of a receiver. You know, beyond what's interesting about this recruitment to me is beyond him just being a fantastic football player and being an in-state product and, all those kinds of things. The guy apparently has over 1 million TikTok followers. Like, the guy is apparently a social media superstar and is already, makes money off that. And everything I've read about this suggests that basically with the changes that are coming or that are already happening in the name, image, and likeness world of college football, that this Evan Stewart commitment is this is going to be the prototype going forward of how to take a recruit and maximize their name, image, and likeness through all the various means that the university can provide. And we talk about the brand of the University of Texas and all those kinds of things. This is the evolution of where college football and recruiting's going. Come to Texas. You've got 1 million social media followers, all those things. We're going to help you maximize that earning potential. to where by the time that you leave this campus, you're already one of the most popular, athletes, maximizing that before you even head to the NFL. And that's a vision, and like, where Texas should be at the forefront of making those things happen. And of course, the pitch of like, hey, you're in Austin. We got all these companies, we got all these things. Like, that's something, as much as Alabama wins and all those kinds of things, that like a lot of the places in the SEC can't provide. And that's where I think Texas is about to really start maximizing that, leveraging the city and the university and the revenue and all those kinds of things. And that's exciting to me. And that's the one to watch with this Evan Stewart commitment, is just really turning that machine loose.
Your point about about Texas being in the forefront of this, we're not hearing about these other schools doing this 2 years from now, and then Texas is playing catch up. Like the fact that they have a commit like this that is already out there, and it already seems to be playing into that, it's exciting to see that Texas isn't playing from behind.
Right.
Should always be out in front. We talk about the We're Texas thing. We talk about the arrogance and the validity behind that arrogance. It's and executing your resources to their fullest potential. And it just, when you have all of that coming together with a head coach that is already showing that he's going to be elite at bringing guys to campus, and is also going to just have, it just makes you feel like you're not going to have to worry about Steve Sarkisian having all of his ducks in a row. I'm not saying he's going to come in and never lose a football game, but I feel like this is another level of preparedness that we're going to see out of a football program that turns you from a, you're going to be a top 25 team, but that's about it every year, to you're going to be a top 5 team every year, and you will be in the discussion to play for national championships. These are the steps that need to be taken in order to elevate a football program to that level. And you have to be impressed and pleased with what Steve Sarkisian has done and the image that he is already creating here, the brand, if you will. Like, the Longhorn brand is already one of the biggest brands in the world. And now it almost feels like with Steve Sarkisian on campus, it's become bigger in a short amount of time.
Yeah. And I just wanted to clarify, just provide the actual number on it. Yeah, Evan Stewart has 1.3 million followers on TikTok, and his account has 32.3 million likes. So there you go.
I mean, Kerry, I don't have a TikTok, but I know that that's good.
Yeah, same.
You don't have to have a TikTok account to know that that's a pretty impressive number.
No, exactly. And that is going to pay dividends.
Yes.
with recruiting. That's just more exposure, and that's more of like, I mean, it really kind of makes the coaches' jobs a little bit easier in terms of recruiting, when it's like, hey, this, 1.3 million people are seeing how much fun this guy's having on campus and what it's like, life as a football player at UT and all those things. And he's working with these different companies and different brands and stuff around Austin, and the whole thing, it speaks for itself.
Welcome to college football.
Yeah.
Welcome to the new college football.
Exactly. And that's what some people aren't going to like it, but deal with it. It's what it is.
It's like, I don't understand all of it. I'm, like I said, I don't have a TikTok account. Not that I don't understand what that is. Like, I see them all the time, I see the videos. I just don't participate in that. You don't have to understand, like this is what's happening now. And with the name, image, and likeness rules coming, they will benefit from it, and they should benefit from it.
Exactly.
Like, there's no reason why these college football players should not be able to benefit off of that. I don't understand why you wouldn't be for kids making money. Like, if you were, when you're 18 to 22 years old and you had an opportunity to make money, and somebody said, no, you can't do it, you'd be mad, right? So what's the difference between that and these kids that are making, like, just because they're playing college football and they're on a scholarship shouldn't, in my opinion, shouldn't mean that they shouldn't be able to make money for themselves because they've worked really hard and earned the right to be a college football player. Like, this is not, I never understood like the pearl clutching behind college football players. Like, this is the right way to do it. In my opinion, to be able to let them benefit from themselves. The university, I'm not saying that the university, you can take it out of it now. Like, I'm still, the university maybe should still be paying them a stipend, and they will, right? Whatever, what's the rule now? Is that,
I mean, the scholarship covers like, I guess a certain amount of stipend money for food and like those kinds of things.
yeah,
But like, how much, and we've talked about this before, going back to like, last year with the money that's made in college athletics
yeah,
and, the amount of money that coaches make, all those things, and the players are, left out essentially. Oh, they get a free education and all this. Okay, sure. Like,
they do. Yeah.
they
But
do, but
I
let's
mean,
call it like for what it, like, essentially what it is, and it's free labor. The universities, it's not just UT. I mean, universities all over the country, the whole system of it, like, produces millions and millions of dollars, off of, players that are kind of, they're there to play school. And
right.
it's, it's just, it's the system that we have. And I think the name, image, and likeness thing, you're absolutely right. It doesn't take like the universities off the hook,
Right.
the university has a responsibility, I think, to, just because you're not a, 5-star recruit or, a famous recruit or something like that, the university still has a responsibility to provide a standard of living, if you will, for a person that comes from, from wherever to play football or basketball or whatever at universities. But when people go, oh, well, does that mean you have to pay the walk-on lineman the same that you would pay, the starting quarterback if the universities were paying players? Well, this name, image, and likeness thing removes that argument completely. All that does is basically say, well, all the number 11 jerseys that are sold at the university co-op, a cut of that money goes to Sam Ehlinger, because that's why people are buying a number 11 Texas football jersey. Nobody's out buying, Jet Bush jerseys. With all due respect to Jet Bush.
Yeah. I mean, how did I know you were gonna, poor Jet?
But I mean, but that's the truth. Like, that's,
Yeah, no,
you
I was
know,
gonna say just say the long snapper, but yeah, that's you're right, and it totally, that I'm glad that was the point that I was gonna come back to as well. Is it takes care of itself here. It doesn't set the university off the hook, but the quarterback will probably make more money off of his name, image, and likeness than the punter.
yeah,
I mean,
there you
maybe
go.
not if you're Michael Dixon, because he was
Well,
a
that's a
badass,
different
but,
one. Well, I mean,
but
if it was still Tom Herman, they would sell the jerseys that just say the punter
the
on the name,
punter,
since Herman
yeah,
wouldn't call him by his name. But
yeah, what a guy.
that's what all the people that love the free market should celebrate that.
Right, exactly. But I'm happy. I'm happy for, as a Longhorn fan, I'm happy for the direction that this program is going. It's just, it's a different level of excitement. It's like, yeah, there was some excitement around Tom Herman, definitely, because he did show that he could recruit a little bit, and had, that Sugar Bowl against Georgia was his peak, and it instead of being the pit stop on the way to the top, it ended up being the tip of the iceberg that then just, you started, it was a slide down after that. So it's almost like now, credit to Herman for at least getting the Texas football program to a Sugar Bowl and having that peak and making Texas fans actually feel like there could be a chance. But now it's like, okay, when we were feeling like Mac was here. I'm sorry, you can't see my hand. When Mac was here, and then Charlie gets it a little bit higher, because there were some moments of excitement around Charlie, but you kind of knew that once you saw who he was as a coach, he wasn't going to be the guy. And then you see Herman come in, takes it another level up, and it's almost this recovery to becoming an elite program is in full effect. And it's appearing that Steve Sarkisian has not wasted any time taking that next step. So it's just,
Well,
we say this every week though, man, and there's a long way until September until this first game is
Yeah.
played, and we see with the type of product that he puts on the field. But it makes you at least have the feeling that the next step is being taken.
well, I will say that this one does, compared to the Charlie Strong and Tom Herman hires, I will say that at this point, and the recruiting's been great, and that's reason to be excited. It just from talking to various people and like the attitudes, there does seem to be a decent amount of healthy skepticism around the Sarkisian hire and where it's going. Like, and I say that because I think it's healthy. It's not just blind optimism about, oh, well, this is the guy. This is it. We're going to win, 4 straight titles, and it's going to be number 1 recruiting classes. Like it's, the machine's rolling now. That's not it. I think there's a lot of people, and maybe the whole Urban Meyer thing kind of helped that healthy skepticism of people getting excited about potentially getting Urban Meyer. And then when that doesn't happen, there's this sense of like, okay, Sarkisian, all right, we don't know, but he seems to be doing everything right. Let's give it some time and just see how it plays out. And I think that's healthy. And I think that's the way that the fan base probably should be entering into the fall. And it's just funny, I think people are already making jokes about, with spring ball, this sense of, oh yeah, well, we can't wait to see the practice reports that say that these players look so good and everything's so different and everything, the training is different. They've never done a weightlifting routine like this. Players are getting bigger. The same stuff that we hear every time there's a coaching change. But I think now there's this skepticism going in about like, we're going to hear that, people are going to get excited, but let's tone this down a bit until the ball is kicked off in the fall. And I think that's great. I think that's where a fan base should be after a decade plus of all this. And maybe that's where things start to turn around. And plus, I think it's good for Sark. I think it's good. I think in terms of the pressure and all those things, I think that's a good way to start for him. Because there's a lot of talent on this, but I don't hear a lot of people saying like, this is a team that's going to go 12-0 next season. This is it. Now that we've got the guy, Sark's going to go 12-0. And if he doesn't, I think I'm hearing a lot of people say like, yeah, this is a little bit of a project. This is going to be 2 to 3 years before this thing is really where, if Sark is the guy, it needs to be with him. And I think that's positive. I think that's a good healthy place to be.
Yeah, Steve Sarkisian comes in with all of the billing as an elite recruiter. He doesn't necessarily come into here as elite game day head coach. And that's why we always make sure that we qualify the excitement about the recruiting and that direction that's going by saying that we have a long time to go until September when we start to see this product on the field and what that looks like. I mean, there are steps to take, and the recruiting steps are being taken. The skepticism is warranted and, pardon me, necessary. And I hope there's more of it, because, excuse me, man, what we don't want to see is sort of that bravado that we're back, right? Are we back, Kerry? Like, are we back? Are we back right now? But
ask me when the boil water notice is gone.
Yeah. I'll let you know. We'll check back in if we're back by then. But no, but really though, like it's great that it's there, and I hope that because it's cautious optimism, right? Like
Right.
That you know that this program is headed in the right direction. You can see it with your own eyes. But now the next step will be to take the next steps on the field and on the Saturday, and that's why you got to approach it with cautious optimism. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, Jay, let's hit on one more thing here before we wrap it up.
Yeah, what you got?
We got Texas baseball. The Sluggin Horns hit the field yesterday. 8-3 loss to number 7 ranked Mississippi State. The Horns entered this season ranked number 9 in the country preseason poll. This is not. They're playing in a tournament up in Arlington. There was some debate given the weather events this week whether this tournament should even be played or not, given the power and water restrictions. But that's a discussion for people that are above my pay grade. So. But yeah, this is not an easy tournament for the Horns. As I said, lost yesterday to Mississippi State, who's 7 in the country. Today they play number 8 Arkansas, and Monday is number 6 Ole Miss. That's a hell of a way to open up the season. We'll get more into the baseball team as the schedule picks up. We kind of see what we've got on the field there a little bit, and but. Just wanted to mention that. I don't know if tonight's game against Arkansas. No, it's apparently on something called Flow Baseball. So good luck finding that on your dials.
I'm not typing Flow anything into my Google bar. Okay, so we're gonna
leave that there.
Flow from Progressive, Flow, whatever, doesn't matter. Like I don't want it. So
Excuse
I'm sorry,
me,
I'm not.
Flow.
Excuse me. Seabass and the guys. It's a tough way to start the season here, and then you got 4 against BYU over the weekend, and yeah, I mean we'll see. We'll get into the Sluggin Horns here, as their season gets rolling a little bit more, and talk about some key players to watch and some expectations for that squad as well. So.
Yep. Yeah, they should be a good team. I mean, obviously the preseason respect number 9 in the country, so this should be a good. I mean, but again, like we talk about with basketball, the Big 12's got some pretty good baseball teams. So it's should be a fun season. It's gonna be limited capacity, I think, with just season ticket holders being allowed in. So love some spring days out at the dish, but it doesn't look like we're going to be getting those unless anything changes. There's always that opportunity, but we shall see. But yeah, we'll get into them more. We'll just see how much, hopefully we can get a win or 2 out of these last 2 games in this tournament. Coming out of there 2-1 would be excellent. The couple of top 10 wins, but just get 1 win, preferably against Arkansas tonight. And I think I can live with that.
Split these last 2. Just split these last 2.
I can live with that. So. Well, man, you got anything else, Jay? It's been kind of a slow sports week with everybody being frozen in blocks of ice. So
yeah. And then, so not only are we still in the middle of a pandemic, we're also frozen solid, and or we were. But I hope everybody's safe out there and made it through all right. And thanks for listening. Appreciate you guys. This is always we have a lot of fun doing this, and we appreciate y'all listening and giving us your feedback. So appreciate y'all. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody. And boil your water. Well, if you have to, even if you don't, maybe it's smart. Maybe might be worth doing it anyway.
Maybe you should still do it.
Yeah. Maybe.
Who knows? Depending on where you live.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's been fun, man. Let's do this again next week.
Let's do it. All right. Peace.
Thanks everybody. We'll see you.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby.
All in 06 on a Saturday.